A View from Tehran, today on The World. I'm Carol Hills. Some sanctions lifted, others imposed, and a prisoner exchange. It was a busy weekend in U.S.-Iran relations. And this Iranian says she's relieved.
Now we feel more secure. At least no Western country is going to attack us.
But can Iran live up to the terms of the nuclear deal that's now in force?
There's no way to deny that there are all kinds of ways to get around this. But the deal could still be a positive thing if it is fully enforced.
Plus, allegations of match fixing. Not in soccer, though. We're talking tennis.
If you were going to invent a sport which was purposefully designed for match fixing, the sport that you would invent would be called tennis.
Those stories ahead on The World. It's been a really intense few days for U.S.-Iranian relations. The nuclear deal was implemented. Iran poured concrete into a key reactor. The U.S. lifted economic sanctions. But the most dramatic development has to be the prisoner exchange, negotiated by Tehran and Washington. 5 Americans held by Iran were freed, and 7 Iranians were released by the U.S. Robin Wright has written about that prisoner swap in The New Yorker. As a journalist and author, Wright has been covering Iran for years. She's also a fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington. Robin Wright, you've talked to some of the key players on both sides in this deal, so I'm guessing you were not as surprised as the rest of us when the deal came down.
No, I wasn't.
How did it all work out?
Well, the United States has been talking about the Americans with the Iranians ever since the nuclear talks began. They talked about it on the sidelines of the meetings between Iran and the world's 6 major powers. But for a year, the talks went nowhere. So both sides decided to set up a secret second channel. Very controversial because this was beyond the purview of the foreign ministry in Iran, our normal interlocutors. The new channel involved a State Department official and a team from the Department of Justice, the intelligence community, and the FBI. On the Iranian side, the team was headed by a member of the Ministry of Internal Security, basically the intelligence operations inside Iran.
And is that sort of a good thing or bad thing from a negotiating point of view?
Well, it was uncharted territory for the United States. They haven't had this kind of contact with the Iranians basically for 40 years. And this was beyond the traditional channels of the foreign ministry, where most foreign relations with most countries are carried out. But it was clear that the foreign ministry might not alone be able to bring to fruition any kind of swap, that they actually had to get the parties responsible for the pickups, the detentions, and the trials of the Americans on the Iranian side.
And it was coincidence that the prisoner exchange happened to be agreed upon very soon after the sanctions lifting.
Well, the talks were fraught from the very beginning, but in the aftermath of the nuclear deal agreed in July, the last thing that Secretary of State Kerry and Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif discussed just before they parted was how important it was to bring closure the cases of both the Americans in Iran and the Iranians who were held in the United States. And from that moment on, the effort accelerated. Now, it still nearly collapsed 3 times because of a lot of complications, legal issues, a lot of hiccups along the way, including right up until the last day. It was expected to happen Friday, didn't happen until Saturday. But it was clear that as these efforts both matured, that they were going to, in the end, probably come to fruition at the same time, even though that was not the original intention.
Now, who were these 7 Iranians who were released as part of the deal?
The 7 Iranians were all involved in either sanctions-busting operations or in violations of the trade embargo imposed by the United States. The Iranians originally came to the Americans with a list of 40 Iranians they wanted to be pardoned. And in the end, the United States got it down to the 7 who were prisoners here and 14 who were fugitives and on the Interpol red list.
Let's move to the Americans who were released. I know you know one of them pretty well, Matthew Trevithick. He used to be a student of yours. Tell us about him.
Matthew actually worked for me as a research assistant after he graduated from college. And he then went on to work for 2 years at the American University in Sulaymaniyah, a city in Iraqi Kurdistan. And he then went on to work in Afghanistan at the American University of Kabul. He was a champion rower, and he also